When we talk about performance, we often talk about it in terms of the end result. So how fast your website runs, how quickly it loads, how user-friendly it is. But performance isn't just about how well our code performs, it's also about how well we perform as we're writing that code. If your workflow sucks, it doesn't really matter how performant your code is because you'll never get it done. I know this because my workflow sucks. When I started doing client sites at Automatic, our project management system looked something like this. It was this endless thread of long emails, often inline. It was really difficult to search. It encouraged people to write long, long emails with lots of different unconnected points in them. Because email isn't tied to a milestone, you don't have any sense of the impact on a project a delay would make. It's really difficult for another team member to jump in on a conversation in an organic way. And if you have multiple clients involved, that becomes more difficult. Anytime you're using reply all, that's a sign you should be doing something different. Collaborators can't choose to opt in or out of the conversations that interest them, and the end result is an awful lot of noise, which means that things can go missing. So I started looking for a better solution. I didn't want to over-engineer it, though. I don't want to spend all my time on the workflow. I want to actually get things done. So I wanted something that was simple and flexible and would allow me to manage the full life cycle of a project. I also wanted it to be accessible for my rather non-technical clients. I wanted the data to be portable in case I changed my mind. I wanted some basic project management solutions like milestones. And I wanted it to be tightly integrated with my work and my code. The obvious solution here was GitHub. It ticks all those boxes, and I already use it for basically everything anyway. So organizing my work there makes sense and makes me more productive. When all my work is in Git, I have the built-in benefits of version control, making it extremely hard to lose my work. So I've been experimenting for the last couple of months with using GitHub as a project management solution. So the first thing I do is I make a repo and I file some issues. So I take all those long, long email threads and all the disconnected points, and I turn each one into an issue. This allows me to keep those conversations segregated, and then I use labels to organize them in a way that makes sense for me. So I use a conversation label for, hey, I'm going to be away for a week, don't worry, or hey, can you respond to these 5 issues you haven't responded to for 3 weeks? And you can be as fancy or as unfancy as you want with issues. So on a micro level, you can use checkboxes within an issue to split one issue into multiple sub-issues. And it shows you a nice little progress bar on that issue. And on a macro level, of course, you can assign issues to milestones with due dates. Once that's ready, I invite my client. So I send an email that looks something like this, and they join up. GitHub, although it's geared toward developers, is quite user-friendly, and there are lots of non-technical users using it. For things like legal documents, recipes, writing, journalism. The client can even respond to notifications via email, so they don't even need to use the interface. Generally speaking, I've found getting them to sign up for a github.com account is the most difficult part. But every now and again, it seems like they're not quite grokking it, which is where documentation comes into play. I like to give my clients documentation anyway. It gives them a bit more autonomy, and it lessens my support load. You could use wikis or README files within GitHub, but a wiki is hard to export, and READMEs aren't particularly friendly for the non-technical user, particularly when they get long. I like to use READMEs for developer documentation anyway, and I really don't want to mix those up. So what I've been doing is I've been using a tool called FlatDoc. It's a bit of JavaScript that takes some markdown files and turns them into formatted websites. So you just download an HTML file, looks something like this, and you tell it which markdown files you want it to use, and you put it somewhere. I use Github Pages because it's easiest. You end up with something that looks something like this. So it's a full-featured documentation site. I use this to create a modular set of reusable documentation. So I have a master repo that contains snippets of generic documentation. For example, I have an intro to GitHub documentation that explains what issues are and how to use them. I have a WordPress basics documentation, and I also have some custom documentation specific to my client's site. This allows me to mix and match those pieces in order to create a single unified documentation site quickly without repeating my work. So this has been working nicely so far, but it really just scratches the surface of what we can do using GitHub as a project management system. So I started thinking about ways I could make my projects more performant and more efficient. One of the trickiest things for me in web development is that sort of disconnect between the design and development stages. So you sort of get a rhythm going with mockups, and there's a lot of back and forth, and then there's this kind of dead period when you actually start coding, because it takes a while to get up and running. Building style guides or mockups or style tiles in HTML can help to ease that transition. You can download lots of templates from the web and adapt them to your needs. And basically, you just change up some Sass variables for color, type, interaction design, whatever, drop in some images, and you get a style tile like this that renders in the browser. Because it uses variables, you can integrate with the source code for your development site, and it serves to smooth that transition. So you write code more efficiently. You already have some written when you move to development, and you don't need to copy over from Sketch or whatever. The first iteration of your development site also looks closer to the mockups you have already approved. The type renders the same, you have access to the same fonts. On top of that, as your styles evolve, you can refer back to this as a living document and audit your styles to ensure they're remaining consistent and sensible for your site. So GitHub is quite user-friendly, but it is geared toward developers. What about more visual thinkers or traditional project managers? I like to use a tool called waffle.io, which is a free project management solution that just hooks into your GitHub issues and pull requests to give a visual overview of what's going on with a project. It looks something like this. It's completely customizable, so you can use story points to resize cards by importance or by time investment. You can use flexible filters to show issues related to a certain milestone or assignee. And you can customize those columns depending on the labels that you're using in your GitHub repo. It also has support for multiple repos, which is great if you're doing something complicated. And it can show you a simple graph of your progress. This is just an extra view layer on top of your existing GitHub repo. So you can share it with the client, and they can look at it there. But you can stay entirely in the regular GitHub interface. You can use whichever interface you're most comfortable with and you're getting most value from at the time. Tools like this really illustrate the power of using GitHub for a project management tool. It has a robust API, so you can build almost anything you can dream up on top of it. So if you want Gantt charts, you can build them. But if you wanted to build a custom project status page to show to your client or your boss, or just for your own reference, you can also do that. Whether you're working with clients, a team, or on your own, there are always things that you can do to improve your workflow. I like this solution because it's flexible and powerful and allows me to build a system that works for me, projects I'm working on, and my workflow. With an improved workflow, you will be able to perform better, and that means you can spend more time focusing on more progressive enhancements and helping your code run better. Thank you.
Sarah Semark, thank you. You mentioned very early on that you were already invested in GitHub with other work, and so it was kind of a no-brainer that you then go forward and use this as project management tool as well. There are so many project management tool options out there. If somebody wasn't already invested in GitHub, why would you recommend to them that they choose GitHub as a project management solution?
Well, I like it because it's directly connected to your code. Although I suppose if you're not writing code, that might be harder. Because it's based on Git, you do have version control built in, which means anytime you change something, you can always go back. It's extremely difficult to lose something, although you can if you try hard enough. I like it because it really can be what you want to make it. And I've used some project management tools before, and I often find them to be a bit overblown and sometimes a bit opinionated about what they want you to do.
So this is more free range and you can go your own way?
Yeah, I think because it's geared toward developers, it is a bit more flexible, and you really can do lots of stuff with it in order to customize it for the way you work, because not everybody works the same way, and not even every project has a slightly different approach.
Yeah, sure. Is anybody else using GitHub like this? Is this a surprise that?
I would love to. This looks great. I mean, at first I was kind of skeptical as you were talking through using issues. I'm like, yeah, but you're missing this overview you get with things like Trello. But then when you showed Waffle.io, I'm like, okay, that's it. Perfect.
Yeah, Waffle is really magical, and I started thinking about it. I mocked up on the train here, actually, a project status screen. I really wanted to build it, and I realized I had a day, and probably wasn't going to happen. But I started talking to people about it, and they were like, wow, that mock-up looks great. We should really build that. That would be so helpful, and we can show clients, and they'll actually have a sense of when a milestone is coming up and when they're going to miss it.
I think that's the tricky bit is convincing the clients, because, you know, when we're starting a project at an agency and we're going to decide what project management tool we're going to use for this project, it's not just our decision, and clients maybe have something they're using, like trigger warning. Nobody chooses to use Jira, right? That's imposed upon, right? I went there. I know you subtweeted it, but I'm saying, right? But we don't start a project and, oh, I'm really looking forward to using Jira on this project. It's something that tends to get imposed. What I need is for you to come in and give this presentation to clients, right, and show them what's possible.
So we actually were using Jira for some projects when I started on the team, and I took one look at it, said, there's no way I'm doing that, and basically pushed everybody to use GitHub. I find the power of suggestion works really nicely, and people are often dissatisfied with tools, and they're using them because that's what they've always used, or that's what's already in place. And changing something isn't really a huge time investment, and it pays off over and over again for so long that it's really worth it. Yeah, don't use Jira.
Thank you. We've got time for one last comment, please.
Just wondering, the layer that you've put on top of it for clients that might not actually want to get involved in the GitHub process, was that born so that you could put maybe like a reporting layer on top of it and they can view that instead of going to GitHub? Or?
That would be the idea.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems I find with using GitHub as a project management is so you have milestones and you can set a due date on the milestones, but it's not very discoverable, and there's not like a big red flashing thing that says, hey, you didn't respond to these issues, our milestone is late, the project's going to launch late, please get your act together. But I can build that if I want to. I really, really do. So yeah, basically because you can interact with that API and you can access that data, you can build something custom for a client, for yourself, for anyone really, depending on what you need and what you need to highlight.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed.